Hello, kids. Welcome back. It's another month. Hey, it's the first Chichester Chat of the new year. Of course, I am Phil. Lilith is here, waking up. And, of course, the man himself puts the Chichester and Chichester Chats, Mr. DG Chichester. Hello, sir.
Hello, Phil. Hello, Lilith. I'm going to try to wake up with you guys as well. And Happy New Year to both of you. It's good to see you both.
Same to you. Happy New Year. All right. So, I'm excited because talking something a little different. We're talking Amalgam Comics, Assassins #1.
Exactly. I have the collected edition I dug out. So I got them all in one. Or I don't know if it's all of them, but it's quite a few of them.
So I know I was interested, but the story itself is good, but just the logistics behind this thing, because this was part of that big Marvel vs. DC event of the 90s.
Yep.
And they did a bunch of these one-shots, so did they just, reach out to everybody, and were they just like, hey, do you want to do a one-shot? And
yeah, I mean, they reached out to me and Scott, and I want to say it was Paul Kupperberg who reached out to me. For some reason, I know Kevin Dooley is the editor listed on there, but I sort of feel like I heard from Paul on it. I wonder if he was maybe an Uber editor, on a lot of the things coordinating. Or maybe I'm just giving Paul credit because he's a nice guy. But this was when Marvel and DC had a little better maybe relationship based upon editorial friendships and such. Mike Carlin was there, and he was still friends with, say, Ralph Macchio. Who, I don't know if they were part of it, but there was a lot of those synergies making these type of things happen. So really, they just gave a call and said, we're doing this thing. It's mashing up these characters. Would you guys be interested in playing in the space? And I'm pretty sure they had the mashups to some extent already figured out, at least on the hero end, which is why they reached out to me and Scott, because they knew they wanted to combine Catwoman and Elektra and Daredevil and Deathstroke. But not quite how that was going to come together and what their names were. That wasn't totally figured out. There were no designs, I don't think, in the case of combining, Daredevil and Deathstroke, that they had thought about the whole female end of it. I think that was something Scott and I cooked up. And then I don't believe that the villain aspect was really in play until we started to play around with it a little bit more.
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question. Is did you come up with these mashups, or did they already have an idea for it? Because that would be a pretty big list, because there was a lot of them.
Yeah, they had the characters in mind. I this is a little ways back, and even with more coffee, there's only so much coffee can do for the neurons. So I don't remember every detail of that, but I have to say that they had the ideas of who they were going to put together. They were going to put Dr. Strange and Dr. Fate together. They were going to put, again, Daredevil and Deathstroke together. I don't think that we made those combinations, and I think that's why they didn't reach out to us and just sort of say, hey, we're doing Mashup Central. Do you guys want to play? I believe it was more, we're doing Mashup Central. It's going to use characters that you guys have history with. That's why we want you to play, with this. It'll have more, not integrity, but, it'll make more sense in a nonsensical world.
Yeah, no, I did like that, because it seemed like they did reach out to people who had history with certain characters. Cause wasn't it Larry Hama who did the Dark Claw with the Wolverine and Batman stuff?
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it makes a lot of sense. And I think, as all these things are, it was a tight turnaround. They were looking for probably the least amount of hassle. And so people who would have at least familiarity with the characters, I think, could more easily get into the groove, right? Know how to make something like this work and feel like it's got the flow. So, at least on half of the end of that, I could say there was some validity to that, right? I hadn't written Catwoman, I hadn't written Deathstroke, but certainly I'd spent enough time with Elektra and Matt Murdock to be able to figure out ways to leverage those characters into this combination, or this amalgam, as it were.
And did they give you any other parameters? Is it just like, oh, hey, drop these characters in as if you were like in the middle of like an ongoing series or something? Or
yeah, there wasn't, because they were only going to be single issue things. Although it kind of surprises me they never went back to it. I'll tell you this story in a bit, which happened a little while ago. A fan reached out to me, but about this world. But they, I think once we said sort of yes, they were like, okay, so pitch us the story. Not pitch us the story, you won't get the assignment, but all right, you got the assignment, so what's going to happen, right? It's the first issue of Assassins, right? Mm-hmm. That was what this mashup title was. First issue of Assassins. What's the kickoff? And so, we just pitched it and figured it was this reverse, Die Hard type of thing, Raid. Although I don't think I was referencing the Raid at that point, but you have to get up the building instead of out of the building, and so let's populate it with nefarious characters who will be other mashups, and reference some of the other stuff going on, right? And that's where I think we started to drop in, like, oh, Strange Fate is manipulating the Big Question, and for folks who haven't read this, the Big Question was a mashup or an amalgam of Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, and the Riddler. So, and which was just weird and bizarre. And I think Scott did an awesome job with the design of that. I love the question on the face, the giant, body shape, very cool character.
Oh, the look of the whole book was great. And I just every time I read this, I'm just like, oh man, the Kingpin would hate being merged with the Riddler. He would just wouldn't be able to stand it.
Well, see, that's where my headcanon about the Riddler comes from, actually. It's like Riddler should be like a rich guy that's just bored and menacing. So I think that definitely influences it. We have a thing going on our Batman podcast where, because of the movie, we're doing like Penguin, Riddler, Catwoman stories, and we just got done doing a Riddler story, and we're talking about when they were trying to revamp him. I'm like, he should win some millions, and then he could really be a thorn in Batman's side.
Right. Well, he's going to have 3 hours to tell us what he's about, I guess, soon enough. So we'll see what.
Supposedly that's the rumor. Yeah, almost 3 hours.
And they don't want it to be. And they don't want us to watch it at home. Okay.
I don't know. That's a long time, but we'll see. It can fly if it's done right.
And the other interesting thing is, the Big Question sits in, his headquarters is in Arkham Tower right now. Detective Comics, they're actually doing something with Arkham Tower. So
yeah.
Well, I sort of feel like we were a little ahead of our time because rereading it as I do, for these things. Fisk is the mayor, right, of Gotham, or whatever it is, and so at that point that was not in play. So I think we got the villain as politician, although that might be redundancy.
It's very Batman.
Yeah,
but
getting him in that position of power, and that there was a little bit of weird poltergeist, ish thing. Yeah, we didn't even bother to clear out the inmates from Arkham. We just built this new tower on top of it, and whoever was here, they're just running around the place as well. So it was high lunacy in a lot of ways, I guess. But reading it over again, it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of everyone's got just constantly has hard lines, which to me is so funny. I don't think there's one line that is really exposition except for the captions. The rest of it is everybody just delivering one stinger after another.
So they sent you the list, and what did you just go down the list and be like, okay, I'll take these, I'll take this mashup. Was this on the list, or did you create this, the Cable and Manhunter mashup?
Yeah, I want to sort of say they were on the list, but I can't remember honestly. And if we did come up with it, it would have been something we ran past them. Did that character show up in any of the other ones? I can't recall. So
I can't remember. I don't believe so. If it was a very small part. So yeah, I don't remember him from anything else.
Yeah, or like the Craven, one.
Oh,
that
yeah.
was, lethal. That was, so I sort of feel like they might have had a list that we might have played with, beyond, the big question and just sort of, ran with that. I mean, that just feels, even if they knew they wanted to mash the two of those up, I would bet real money, or that I came up with that name. That just feels like that's one of the ridiculous things I would come up with. Just like Cat's Eye, which is too clever by half for itself. It's just, that's that. And for those who don't have it in front of them, it's Cat's Eye, as in the ninja weapon.
SAI,
so,
yes.
SAI, yep, I know.
That's a Chichester, yes.
That's a Chichester, yep.
So how much lead time did you have for creating this issue? Because I mean, it wasn't
it wasn't crazy, but it wasn't take your time either. There were some assignments back in those days. Infamously, I remember doing an adaptation of a movie called Strange Days, which was a James Cameron scripted thing about some kind of future VR type thing, a murder mystery, and that was like a 48-page adaptation, and that was, you have the weekend to do that if you want to do it.
A James Cameron story? Are they out of their mind?
Yeah. It was like, take the script, read the script, turn it into a 48-page, script, and good luck with that. But this was probably just a fairly regular schedule. So I want to say, there was probably, I'll say 2 weeks, maybe 2-3 weeks to sort of pitch the plot, write the plot, do the script, that sort of thing. I think that because Scott and I were familiar more with working in the plot script way of doing things, in those days we've talked about this before, the Marvel way, which was you'd write a plot, the artist would illustrate it, the pages would come back to the writer, then he'd write the script, the dialogue, and the captions, versus the so-called DC way, which was written more like an entire movie script, everything described and the dialogue all at once. Even though this was done through the DC offices, for me at least. I don't know how other folks, I don't know if some of them were done through the Marvel offices. I asked them if we could do it that way, just because we were, that was a good rhythm for us. And they let us run with it. And it felt pretty reasonable, but it wasn't, again, sort of, hey, just go let the muse hit you and get back to us when you have an idea,
So they just split the workload and be like, okay, half the books will go through the DC editorial, the other half will go through the Marvel editorial.
Yeah. It's funny. I didn't flip through and, this particular one I have, to sort of see who the editors were on some of the other things. So, but I'm presuming there was plenty of Marvel editors involved with these things. Because even though there was a friendly rivalry in those days, generally, I think that there's, that sense that, we want the skin in the game, on both sides of the fence. So, just checking it out now. I mean, there's plenty of talent, from both sides, across the way. So, but usually, there'd be a split, and there'd be whoever the executive editors were kind of overseeing the entire thing. They would have been the ones shepherding everything and just being the reality check.
And I always assume this is 95 that DC got to look at Scott's art and be like, hey, we need this guy for a Nightwing book.
Maybe, certainly, there had been, a ton of attention on Fall from Grace. So, Scott's star was on the rise, from then. And, I think people were just looking at him and probably just starting to consider him, overall. So, whatever worked out for him, and that this may very well have been more of an in that way. Whatever worked out for him was great.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, just all these characters. I think I'm pretty sure these ones were in some of the other books. Jimmy Yerk, and he mentions his boss J.J. White.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if we spun those out again, and from this book, and then people just sort of picked them up, or they were keeping a running list of things to do, because we weren't under any license that I can remember, that, or mandate rather, that we had to, you got to use Jimmy Urich, you got to combine, Jimmy Olsen and, Ben Urich, or name check, J. Jonah White, or something like that. But naturally it just felt those things would kind of come together. We'd scandalize the Big Question, the Kingpin Riddler mashup, and then we'd want to discredit him in the press, when the press was good for those things back in the day. I can't imagine that would actually be a storyline you'd use, nowadays. But back then,
it'd be some small YouTube channel.
Yeah, or you'd put it out, and then there'd immediately be another press that would say, no, that's not what happens. He's just climbing outside of this building, hanging upside down naked, or something like that. But he wanted to be there.
So the titles, they tickle me pink. It's classic Chichester jibbing. There's definitely, a lot of that going on. The political suicide thing. It's a very, again, I think this just comes out of the time and everything, and people have sort of said this, but it's just a very 90s style story. It's very 90s style dialogue. It's got the 90s are back, so they can.
The 90s are back, so it's great. But it's actually a lot of fun. I mean, I did notice a mistake though as I was going through it, which is the first time I sort of noticed it. It's like a misplaced word balloon, and also there was a gaffe on the letters page, which was funny because the letters page was just completely made up. But it's in the letters page, it's in the course of the story, spoiler alert, the Dare, who is the mashup of Deathstroke and Daredevil, dies,
I didn't see that,
quote unquote. But it says in the letter column, it says, "It ain't over till the fat cat sings. Is Cat's Eye really dead?
Yeah,
we'll dare Avenger." So somebody completely got that backwards and wrong. And then there was a gaffe on one of the word balloons, like had been misplaced on one of the earlier pages. But considering everything that was going on, it's sometimes a miracle anything gets done. So,
was it fun, or was it? I mean, in certain ways, did it rub your writers the wrong way, just because it's like you had to leave it open ended? Like, it's like, hey, we're not starting at the beginning. You're not going to have an ending. It's going to be kind of open ended.
No, that's actually, flashing back to that earlier incarnation of myself, and just even looking at it now and sort of seeing the dialogue that was written and how I wrote it. You have no responsibility to anything, right? You're unhindered by all this baggage of, say, being responsible for a monthly book and where you're picking things up and where you have to leave them. You're just being dropped in the middle of a situation, and it's kind of like off to the races. And I just get that sense of the energy of the dialogue and the quips and the ferocity of some of the things. I don't know. He was going to rip the horns off the Dare and leave her, presumably for dead. And now Cat's Eye's on a revenge mission, and what happens next? I don't know, and I don't care. But I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry. How do you get the horns back on her? And what does that mean for her senses? It seems like I was trying to set something up that the physical horns. No, but that the physical horns had some tie to her abilities, right? Mm. Some tie to her multi-sensory abilities, perhaps. But yeah, I didn't have to worry about any of that stuff because you're a free license. You're coming in, you get to play, and then you get to leave. It's sort of like Walter White in Pulp Fiction, right? You show up in your tuxedo and you have some coffee and you have a good time, tell some people here's how it's going to go, and then you get to leave the building and drive away really fast.
Yeah, it seemed like the people had fun with these books, but I know, when I got to the end and saw that fake next issue blurb, I was like, oh man, I want to see I want to see issue 2 of this, but it's never going to happen.
Well, that's the thing, and isn't it kind of weird that with all the retros and remakes and returns to things that they wouldn't have gone back to this at some point in one way or another. They've never done another Amalgam thing, right? They've never name checked this universe and picked up on any of these things.
No, Marvel kind of did their own, where they just like merged their own characters. But yeah, no,
right.
Yeah.
But that's but not this. I mean, like maybe it's just the inability after the companies became so uber corporate that they no longer could. Like I said before, they were corporate, but the friendliness of the editors and maybe you're one, your corp. There's corporate, and then there's Disney corporate, right? So maybe before the Disney corporate, that ability of a Denny O'Neil to talk to whomever at Marvel to sort of say, "Hey, let's do this." Yeah, okay, let's do this, and somebody could just make the contracts and they could sort of run with it. But I think there's a big fan base, maybe not big, but certainly a committed fan base for these stories in this like little world. I had a guy, a fan of these books, and all of them, reach out to me last year and was just talking about how much he enjoyed all the stories, and he was actually on a quest to get original art from all the different artists based on the different characters, and he actually finally got like a piece from Scott. Which was really cool. So he's created like a whole database and a whole, background on things, just the level of commitment that he was putting into it. I thought was really admirable and just sort of showed the passion, that people can create because the stories felt, Phil, as you were sort of saying, I think, like, I want to know what happens next. I want to know more. And I think that was the irresponsibility of everybody working on it and the fun of everybody working on it. You could set those situations up in ways that just were great big teases. I think that might have been a mandate that there were sort of cliffhanger type things to them so that you'd feel like something was going to happen as opposed to telling, even though this is a fairly complete story, it has that sense that more will happen soon.
Yeah, I assume they were mandates because I think pretty much every book ended on some kind of cliffhanger or
right,
like, hey,
right.
Check this out.
Were they all issue one? Yeah, they were all issue ones too.
Yeah.
So I'm just flipping through this thing. So that would also make total sense in the issue one. Trying to get the readers to come back for the next issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that would make complete sense. So. Yeah, there were just some weird, fun, funky designs of the characters.
I always thought like Marvel and DC don't play ball anymore because the two big corporations don't want neither one of them want like their characters to be outshined by the other side.
Yeah, and it or undermined in terms of intellectual property. There's probably just so many complications now with the lawyers. Not that those complications didn't exist before, but I think it could be a lot easier and much more of a handshake. Not that there weren't contracts and such, but more of a handshake deal, and that they were playing in a friendly shared space where now there might be a lot of I'm guessing more consideration of copyright dilution. Because it's already bad enough when there's 50 other characters with claws that pop out, and now you're diluting the character more because you're combining it with another thing. So does that undermine both Batman and Wolverine? Does that undermine both Daredevil and Deathstroke? I don't know. I would imagine in some ways it has to.
Deathstroke could use the publicity these days, though.
Yeah. So, but so this was Carlin and Grunwald. Who did this? So this was when Mark was still alive. So, and that makes perfect sense because the two of them were frickin' frack, and Carlin was Mark's assistant at one point. So, they had that synergy.
We're also losing a lot of those connections to the old guard who were friendly with each other, worked both sides of the fence forever.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's that much back and forth nowadays. Probably, I don't know, but there was certainly. I mean, it was a I don't know if it was a smaller world, but it was definitely a world of shared things. You know, at one point, DC picked up almost the entire slate of Marvel's top editors. You know, when there was a shakeup and confusion and stuff, right? Carlin, Denny O'Neil, Archie Goodwin. Moved in rapid fashion from Marvel to DC, and then there was always different crossover with big creators, sometimes who played writer and editorial roles, Marv Wolfman, folks like that.
It seems like back in the day, like there was just you either at Marvel or DC. You know, if you left Marvel, you just walked across the street to DC, and then a couple years later, you walked back. Now it seems like they wanted. Not everyone, but a lot of the top ones, they try to sign them to like exclusive, like DC or Marvel.
And then when they leave, they go and do their indie stuff. So.
Yeah, exactly.
There's
a lot more options in that way in the business world. And that, I'm happy for the writers, but kind of the fans are like, oh man.
Yeah, well, that's the I don't know what the rates are. As you're saying, cross the street. Tom DeFalco used to have a great joke. He'd pull a couple bucks out of his wallet and throw it at people. I'm like, here's cab fare to DC. And it's like that. But when he quote unquote wanted somebody out of there, but it was always a good laugh. But I don't know what rates are these days. I've heard that I know they're been drastically reduced for colorists and letterers, which is ridiculous. And I don't know what the rates are for writers and pencilers and inkers at the big companies, but I've heard they have not kept pace with what you would think they should be, over time. So if that's the case, Lilith, then I think it's going to drive people to other places, to independent publishers or if you've got a name.
I'm happy for the creatives, but the fans, we always get a little.
Yeah, of course. And I'm sure those creators would enjoy the chance to keep working on. I mean, everybody probably wants a sense of working on their own things too, but I'm sure people would love to continue to work on quote unquote name brand properties, and tell those stories for themselves and the fans. But if you're being offered 3 times the money or more, I don't know, somewhere else, do the math. Right. And ultimately it's not going to add up in the long run. So.
And that's why I could never be a creative. It's like you're doing your passion for a living, but you're doing your passion for a living. So you want to be paid, Yeah. Yeah. But sometimes you have to,
I mean, you got to get paid, in one form or another, but if you're doing it strictly for the money, I think it undermines you, very quickly, right? Because then you lose sight of anything except that.
It seems like a weird equation because it's like, yeah, you go over and do your own stuff, you make more money, but if you do some, if they put you on a big title like a Spider-Man or a Batman, it's like you're going to get a lot of publicity, so you can.
Oh, you're getting paid in exposure.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, no, that's the worst, right? And if you've ever, see those awful things that online is notorious for this, right? Yeah, come work for us at name brand, website. We can't pay anything, but you get the exposure working on this. F you. That's never going to add up. There's always worth to something, and you can afford to pay something beyond exposure. But look at any of these folks who are being offered, not any of them, but certainly a lot of them, who are being offered maybe some of these other deals. They made their bones on name properties, right? They made their name and their reputation on Batmans and Daredevils and whatever else. And they learned their craft, and they did it. They had a place to play it out. They had a place to play with a lot of toys and worlds that were partially built, which they could add to, or they could mix up and mash up, and do things with and turn on their heads and have the safety of a pre-established world to play in, and then learn their craft. Right. I'm sure if you track back to the first story of a lot of these folks, both writers and artists, and look at the work there, it's not as refined or deep or interesting as it is now. They've learned it. They've learned it by doing. And that is why they get offered the deal, right? If they had been doing, Flying Rodent Man, instead of Batman, might have been the same exact stories, but the profile would not be the same. And you probably would not be offered the same deal that you're getting. You might have told the same exact stories. But at some point you just say, all right, what's the financial reward, which is important, but also at a certain point, I think with any company owned thing, right? You have a limited time span, right? They're going to move on to somebody else. You don't own that character. And while you're their shining star for the moment, they don't owe you anything, right? Editorial situation is going to change. The company situation is going to change. You're not going to be the bright, shiny object anymore. And because it's a work for hire situation, and you do not own anything to it, even with a lucrative contract, right? Even at DC or Marvel or whatever offering maybe a better contract than the norm, you don't own it. And on any given Tuesday, they can just say, yeah, we got somebody else who's going to work on it. Sorry. Read this, essay that Herb Trimpe wrote, a few years back before he passed away. Herb Trimpe was one of the mainstay artists at Marvel, like back in the day, and created, worked on the Hulk forever, created a character called Wolverine, which you might be familiar with. And he worked on everything. But at some point in the late 80s, early 90s, Herb's style was not in style anymore, right? Image was in style, that sort of thing. So suddenly Herb, who was a steady, professional, in-demand artist because people knew he could deliver, couldn't get work, right? Even though he was on contract at Marvel, and contract at Marvel at that point meant you got a special rate if you did a certain amount of pages, per month, but you had to find those pages. You were either on a regular book or you had to search them out. And so he wasn't getting the work, because it was going other places. So suddenly he's on the outs, and that was Any Given Tuesday. So.
Yeah, people always complain about like the higher prices of comics, which I don't like paying them either. But I'm always just like, I hope paying more. Some of these creatives are getting more money these days. Hopefully,
Phil, I don't know. I should just ask somebody. I just haven't. What the rates are. But I don't think, as I said, I know that the rates for colorists and letterers are less now than they were when I worked in comics. Full on. That's insane, right? And the argument would be, well, it's all digital now, and you're not doing as much work.
Have you seen some of those scans from the digital team?
Right, exactly. And in colorist case, because my best friend Greg Wright is a well-known colorist from that era and still does color work. Now and again on different comics, right? Colorists went from doing color guides, which were then put into effect by the printers, to having to pull the full separations, right? They then had to create all the separations, the digital files, which would then go to the digital press. So they actually took on more work, and yet their rates went down. So because it was digital work. That's not in every case, but in a lot of cases. And so if I don't know if the rates of writers... Give you an
iPad and an Apple Pencil and see how long it takes you. I'll put it to you that way.
There's a lot of work, and I don't know if writers and pencilers and inkers rates have gone down. But even if they just stayed where they were, right? My rates are from 20 years ago. 25, 30 years ago. That's insane. How could the rates not go up a lot? So, and if they haven't, then that's just the cost of publishing and printing and smaller markets, and yet wanting to try to make as much money out of it. But I don't know all the economics myself. So
yeah, Marvel.
That's in another world. Go ahead.
Yeah, Marvel. Throw a good rate at Mr. Chichester here. Get him on that new Elektra book I hear is coming in the spring.
Oh yeah.
I think it's like, and I'm totally joking here. But again, like we sort of. The look on the Dare here, we sort of presage the whole, the woman without fear. You know, the whole, you know.
I know, yeah, I mean, it kind of does, and it kind of like a. I mean, I know the other characters, the mashup of Catwoman, but yeah, I mean, even the Dares costume kind of reminds me of like something Catwoman would wear, maybe even.
Are you thinking
it was a fun.
Phil?
What?
What's that?
Are you thinking of the armpit costume?
Yes, the new Catwoman costume. Yeah, no.
I have to say these two characters though. This is like the ultimate. You know, there's severe cheesecake, you know, in this book. It's just like every possible shot Scott could, you know, throw them in a side angle with, you know, butt shots and, you know, straight up the side of the leg.
I'm sure the fans didn't mind. I didn't.
Oh, no, of course not.
I mean, this was 1995. I mean, this was comics, yeah.
I mean, the way the screen's positioned right now, you've got the zoom in of the Dares, you know, breasts right next to my head, so it's cold in here.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very yes. She's paying attention, I suppose, but it's.
So that trade you have of like a bunch of these, did that come out? That came out in the 90s, also, right? Like around the same time, like right after this.
When did this come out? No, this was when did this come out?
Because I thought they put the trades out, and then they haven't reprinted any of this since they did those trades. I think they did trades once, and that was it.
Really? I thought this was like more current.
Oh, was it? Maybe.
Maybe not. It says copyright 96. It's dedicated to Mark, so it's after Mark died.
Okay.
But the the intro says hard to believe it was more than 30 years ago we first smashed our heads together. Oh, no. That was just the goofy, Carwold. Like, as if the whole universe was created back then, this whole mashup universe. Yeah, maybe I have had this for a while. I thought this was like, you know, a more semi-recent, like, kind of collection that came out, but possibly not. God, what a mess these trademarks must be. Amalgam and all Amalgam characters, their likeness and related elements are jointly held trademarks of DC Comics and Marvel Characters, Inc. That must just be like we will never touch these characters again agreement of things.
No, Warner Brothers wants to touch them. They need it. Marvel's like, no!
Well, this should be a ball, like, right? This should be it's total what if territory. It's all multiverse, you know, type stuff, and it's no different than DC having 16 different Batmans, you know, within the course of a year in the movies or something. A week. Exactly.
No, what was the highest one we had? Like 11?
I forget, but it was
like 11 Bat books.
A couple weeks ago, every book that came out that week was either Batman or something Batman related, like, you know, like a Harley Quinn or something. Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking more about just the fact of how many different Bats on screen, right? You're gonna have the Batman, then you're gonna have Keaton back in the Flash, you know, who seems like he's overshadowing that. It's their version of a multiverse is just whatever the hell we want.
Hey, look at this.
Yeah, look at this. Look at this. Did that work? No, look at this.
Remember this?
So, right.
I guess they're trying to reboot that thing, but
they should reboot this instead.
I know.
That's what we're saying.
That's the thing. It just has to be a copyright nightmare because I just think, you know, it's, again, I'm basing it on that one fan, but I've had other people, you know, talk about it as well. But this guy was so passionate. And when you just think about and I think it's well done fan service, but there's a lot of aspects to these things that are pure fan service, right? This is, you know, what if, like, you know, there was, you know, a combination of Captain America and Superman or something like that. It's like, yeah, what if? And then you had some real thinkers and creators play that out and say, okay, where does that go? That's the fun of the world, right? And so unless the only reason not to do it again would be, or to build on it, have issue 2, or where are we now? It's just an impenetrable maze and tangle of rights and that kind of thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, just between, I'm sure this event was very profitable, but they're just like the mountain of paperwork for each individual character, and then more. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just, you know, because there was minor characters. I think, what was it, at Bruce Wayne Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., you had like the mix up of like Moon Knight and Nightwing. was it like
Yeah.
Nightwing or it's just like, you really didn't have much going on with Moon Knight back then, but now he's getting his own Disney Plus show, so there's going to be even more hassles with characters and stuff. And
right. It's like, nah, we don't want you to touch that. You're not touching that. You're not going there. You're not doing anything with it. But it's but it is just the fun of figuring it out, and then the fun of telling these little mini moments of the story in the setup. There's like half a dozen lines, maybe that sort of set up who is Cat's Eye, right? And, raised on the streets of Egypt or Cairo, and yet her father was still the ambassador, as Elektra's father was, and an ambassador. So you start to meld all these little bits, and they're just fun. And it goes back to where we started with, and there's no responsibility to it. I don't have to worry about that. I just have to make it work in the moment.
I mean, yeah, again, like all the copyrights and stuff would be a huge pain, but it's like, if you get an army of lawyers on that, I mean, how much money would this thing make? I mean, people will be coming back to comics after like 30 years that, like, oh, I remember reading this. I got to come back and read this. Or it's like new people. Hey, Marvel and DC. Oh, okay.
Do you want to start the petition, Phil? I'll start the petition.
What, for this series? Yeah.
I mean, if one or the other was ever to absorb the other things, I could see them doing it as another sub-universe of things.
Let's just call it what it is. Dear Disney, can you please, for the love of goodness, finally buy Warner Brothers? Just buy
DC, or or take it away if Warner's not doing anything with it.
See, Lilith, you always roll your eyes when I say, "Hey, come on, Disney, buy."
Disney has more money than goodness.
Disney
buy. Can do it.
Disney buy DC too. Hey, man, then we can get stuff like this again. Come on.
Right.
Disney, you're
but it is it was just a fun way to play out.
If this world came back, is there any like character mashup that you would want to write besides these two?
Oh, that's a good question. You mean among the other characters?
Or something that somebody else started? Mm-hmm.
You mean like, would I want to write Amazon, or would I want to write one of the other titles in this world, or would I want to mash up some characters that weren't mashed up, or
special guest star?
You have an answer for both.
Okay, that's a good question though. I think Strange Fate would probably be a lot of fun to write. And even though they're a lot of ways the same character, but you're just playing with that, that mashup, would be kind of cool. And I think that Super Soldier, the Captain America, Superman would be a lot of fun to work with, as well, just because they're both characters. I mean, I love Cap. I've had a chance to work on Cap, and Superman is just, I think, interesting and vastly misused, very often.
You'll get no arguments here, sir.
Yeah. It's like, well, we can't make Superman work. It was a great, because it was just like a tweet from from Neil Gaiman or something. Somebody was, saying, well, you can't fault, DC for not knowing, what to do with Superman. They have to figure out ways to make him relevant for today. And he tweeted something back like, it doesn't need to be relevant. He just needs to be inspirational or something like that. I'm mangling like Neil Gaiman language, but it's, which is the whole point, right? It's like, it's not about relevancy and something, we live in dark times, so Superman needs to be dark. It's about, he needs to be, you missed the point. But I think of those, those would be sort of fun ones, to work with. But I would have to give some more thought to like
the mystical stuff. I think you don't get a chance to do mystical enough, so I'd sign up for that. Strange Fate.
Yeah, I mean, that's always. I mean, I default more and more to that stuff. It was always my first love was mystical and horror stuff, so that would probably be a good place to go back and play again.
Something with ninjas, because Lil says only DG Chichester can write ninjas.
I did a lot of ninjas.
Come on, Sophie Campbell, give him a call for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff. Yes. just one collab.
I think I still have like a bunch of my ninja, books over there. I just bought this great book on like samurai. It's like Samurai and the Sacred. So it's like, I still like go back to these things and I see these and I'm like, oh man, I got to read that one because I bet you there's a story in there. So it's the curse of like getting inspired by old interests.
File.
Yeah, I borrowed so many ninja books from Carl Potts back in the day. He had just an amazing library, knowledge of all that. He was a huge influence on trying to get the ninja stuff right.
This would be the man to write the official, finally tying it together, Daredevil and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle origins together.
Come on, Pete! Call him! For the love of goodness. Because Pete does not want to touch that at all at this point.
What? Did they have the same origin?
Well, yeah, I mean, they tried it, but like they're just kind of, both the creators have kind of notoriously been kind of done with the characters, just kind of do what you want at this point. So
yeah.
But yeah, no, I was thinking.
Read Last Ronin whenever it's finished.
That's still not out yet.
So let me ask you guys, of all these Amalgam ones, and if you've read them all, which one did you think worked the best in terms of just feeling like, or did they all just work, for you?
They all worked in their own way, but honestly, just out of the sheer like hilarity of it all, I think Darkclaw, because it's like, come on. What? Like, it's like a very tongue-in-cheek cash grab, look at us kind of thing, but I thought that that's kind of the point of the Amalgam characters, and that is like the character that sums that all up.
Yeah.
The one who embodied the 90s the best, Darkclaw.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, this was good. I think like the ones where like it was the more like a solo character more than a team, because it's just like they threw so much at you with the team books. But this one was good. Yeah, Darkclaw, Super Soldier, Spider Boy. Yeah. God. That wasn't even
a menace to both of them.
It wasn't even Peter Parker. It was Ben Reilly in there.
Exactly.
It was so 90s.
Peter wanted no part of it. It's maybe who knows? Maybe that'll show up in Across the Spider-Verse.
Sony don't know no better. Sony be like, we didn't know.
if any place that character and this little thing would get a nod, it would be in the mashup of those. I mean, they pour so much stuff into that first movie. I can imagine this next one's going to be trippier in terms of all the references and things that are there.
But yeah,
he's going to be so grounded when he gets back, though, because he was already grounded. If you've seen the trailer.
But no, I never slabbed comics. I'm thinking I might have to slab some Amalgams, because I have the originals from back in the day. I'm like, I never see these around anymore.
I've only have like half. And actually, there's a really big comic tent sale 2 hours from me at the end of the month, and they always have really rare different stuff, so I'm definitely gonna go down there and try to find some. It never not surprised me, so.
Oh yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, I need to go to that. There's something within an hour or two of me, some store. I don't know if they still do it. I know pre-COVID they did it, or they just open up their warehouse and it's just aisles of long boxes, and I forget what the prices were.
Well, yeah, a lot of the big comic people that have that were generally traveling from convention to convention because of COVID, they're kind of finding these big outdoor spaces and contacting other people, and they're just making this big mega thing. So while COVID sucks, I mean, some good stuff did come out of it. Mm-hmm. They don't have to pay the hotels and stuff. They're just paying a guy that has a big open field. So it's kind of spreading the money around.
Oh, yeah, that's the one down here, was it last year? Remember when we went to Dave & Buster's down here, Lilith? There was a comic book store down there. They just had, something in the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
They just sat at the end of the parking lot with all these tables. I mean, you can't kill comics, COVID.
Honestly, and that's kind of the nice thing about having an older fan base, too, where, we'll come out. just make it easier. We'll come out.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any further questions for this man, Miss Hellfire?
No, I think we should let him enjoy his Saturday.
Well, thank you. Well, this is a nice way to start it. So, as always with you guys, so fun story and a fun way to kind of revisit it. So again, thanks.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it's always great reading one of these. Oh yeah, that's stuff I remember, stuff I forgot.
Nostalgia. in such a good way too. Not like nostalgia, like but good nostalgia.
Yeah, good nostalgia.
All right, let's throw out the homework here. Okay. That's
What's
right.
Homework?
I can't believe I haven't gotten to this point yet with you, but yes, next month we're going to cover, I believe it's your first arc, Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. 7 through 10.
Okay, all right, that's great. Is that the Leviathan story? I think that's Leviathan. I'll have to check it out.
Like I said, I think I did my homework. I think that's your first arc, so.
Right. Yeah, I'll have to see. Because the first arc was a quote unquote fill-in, and then Bob Harris came back to the book, and then for a few, and then I took it over after that. So I'll have to check. I'll have to go back and take a look. But either way, that'll be very cool and tap into my too much James Bond references.
All over the place, Phil.
This man has varied work. I want to get to it all.
Somebody posted a picture of one of the Nick Fury scenes from Daredevil, and it was, they were just saying it's just so weird to look at Nick Fury from then, because just everybody, of course, associates Samuel L. Jackson with Nick Fury these days. So when you go back and you're looking,
David Hasselhoff, damn it!
Oh my God! I will say this for the Hoff, he didn't look bad. The still pictures, right? When it was just sort of like the publicity stills, he looked pretty okay, I thought. And then he moved.
They bamboozled us.
Then he opened his mouth.
They started talking. Well, what can you do? All right, I've got my homework.
All right,
guys.
All right, before we leave, sir, plugs. Let the people know where they can find you.
My newsletter continues. I'm a little behind. I got to get some new things written this weekend, but folks who want to keep up on my new writing and just ideas on what I'm digging, and also sometimes little tours of comics. We did a little profile on Assassins in one of these newsletters. Is at storymaze.substack.com, and you can check that out. If you like it, you can subscribe, which I'd appreciate.
All right, and we made a new decision, Mr. Chichester. All the interviews, these Chichester chats, they're going to be exclusive to the Patreon for 2 weeks. Then we're going to release them to the public. So.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
So,
all right, good.
So if you people listen to this and you love listening to this man, you can hear him every month. Just subscribe to our Patreon, patreon.com/capesandlunatics.
Excellent. I will profile that as well and make sure people know that that's available.
All right.
Guys, stay well. Phil, stay warm.
I will.
Or get warm. And we'll see you again next month.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
All right, guys. Take it easy. Bye-bye.